at the top, let me remind you that we were in the middle of a lot of divine energy coming our way, as I mentioned last Sunday about this whole month of August. And it's all about letting us know, waking us up to the fact that everything is unfolding in divine order.
Still not on. Red light? You got red light? Okay. Maybe it's muted?
Oh.
There you go.
Okay.
It was muted. Somebody likes to push the mute button on that board all the time.
Okay. So humanity is experiencing the final critical stages of preparation, as I said, prior to the activation of what's called consciousness codes. And that's coming into the DNA of the millennials. Thank you. And the children that are coming into our life right now to help us with what's going on in our world, which means connection to the higher consciousness of the Christ. This activation started yesterday, will continue to this coming Thursday, as the threefold eclipse series that we're in the midst of is brought to fruition. During this time, the monumental efflux of light that's coming in from this rare series will be assimilated into the cellular structures of every person on earth by his or her I am presence, which is a really great connection to the oneness of life. Just think about how everybody is getting this energy in, whether they use it or not or aware of it. One of the eclipse series that's happening was the solar eclipse in Leo in the new moon that occurred yesterday. And the king of the beast, which is what Leo is about, expresses pretty clearly what we're all feeling right now, or most of us. It's hot, we're cranky, we're our regal ruling selves, and anything that walks by the wrong way is about to get pounced on, devoured, or chomped. Or at the least roared at for being in the way. Anybody feeling that? The best advice for today is to chill out. Don't attack anyone. Don't let anyone attack you. Just wait it out because the heat is on. What's new will start tomorrow. So stay away from any sudden moves or drama. It's time to keep your mental focus on the positive and use this time that's happening for prayer and deep meditation. But be aware that the most intense phase of August 28th is not over yet. We have 6 retrograde planets happening during this month, which means the energy is going backwards and going to come back through again. And we have the rest of this week in the annual World Congress on Illumination in Hawaii that's going on. So, with all of that, what I want to say, beloveds, is please stay connected to your own personal power. This is an opportunity to know everything's going okay, open ourselves up to receive the light of the Christ consciousness. So now that I've said that, let me say hello and welcome to the law of sacrifice. We're back on, this is the 3rd law that we're talking about. Every one of us needs an ideal. We need an image of what's possible in order for us to have a visual experience, a feeling inside of us that there really is a possibility for us to become more. Meaning what we want to look at is what somebody else has already accomplished this, or where is this happening, so we can say to ourselves, ooh, I can have that for myself as well. Well, for over 100 years, Abraham Lincoln served as such an ideal for a lot of American kids. Lincoln came from very humble backgrounds. He didn't have a lot of money, lived in a very simple upbringing. And yet there's a quality of Lincoln that inspires us to reach more, to be connected to the greatness within ourselves. Now, there isn't any one of us in this world or here right now who could say that we haven't had as many opportunities, talents, or abilities bestowed upon us and within us that Lincoln had. Yet, what was it about this man and the way that he lived his life and the way he made his choices that brought about such a demonstration of goodness that would inspire us? Down to the channels of our life, to the corners of time, to reach us even this day, all these years later. It's said that Lincoln's soul began to grow from the seed of thought that was placed in his mind by his mother when he was just a small boy. His mother made a point to teach him that all that she could when she was able, but she became ill when Lincoln was still young. When she realized that she was dying, she called her family all around her. She placed her hand on Lincoln's head, and looking at her children and family, she said to them, "Be good to one another and treat each other right." She felt that she had given them everything that she could, and that was her last message. Be good to one another. And then she died. She might have dreamed about it, but had really little understanding or realization of what her son, this little boy who was standing before her that day, would become. Now, Lincoln was quite young at her passing, but he never forgot her. And she taught him a lesson that he carried with him throughout his life. She taught him that the beginning of wisdom is not imposed by discipline, but the beginning of wisdom is, first of all, the desire for discipline to help us in our lives. The love of discipline, the voluntary choice of discipline. There's a principle here at work, and as I've said before when I had that chart out here, principle, first of all, we want to start with God as being the principle for everything that happens in our life, and in all the principles that come from God, which are the laws, principle of love, etc. And so it's at work here, and what it is, it's about the harnessing of our powers inside toward a desired end that we want in our lives. For instance, if you take water and you channel that water, it will run into a turbine and create electricity. But if you just let it go all over the place, there's no power from that same amount of water. It's the same thing with our thoughts. If we just let our thoughts go around all the time, we're not focused on what we want and where we're going, and how this connects to the other laws that we've been talking about. So let's say, for instance, you go to a concert, a play, or an opera, and you listen to a voice that just simply captivates you and the whole audience. How does that voice happen? Well, first of all, it doesn't just happen. Granted, they may be gifted, but these magical moments that happen do not happen by chance or accident, but by discipline. Discipline that is constantly chosen, ardently desired, and patiently persisted in. Most of us believe that the words sacrifice and discipline are totally misunderstood. I have come to understand sacrifice is not losing something, which sometimes we may think, but is gaining something. I see it as giving up something of a lower nature to receive something of a higher nature. Oneness with God. I spent a lot of years 4 years in the Navy, and especially in boot camp, I thought they were teaching me and the others something about discipline, but actually what they were doing was punishing some of those on the square ground for not doing what you're supposed to have been doing, and they called that discipline. I've come to learn that discipline is when we give ourselves a command and then we follow it. No matter what gets in the way, we got to stay focused on moving forward and our connection to God, and know that you're going to need discipline to do that. So if you take and study this piece of sculpture that I included in an earlier message, comes from Matthew, and it says, "Straight is the gate and narrow is the way. It leads on to life, and few there be who find it." So take that in for a moment. I believe it's talking about this law, that there's very few that find it, that really understand it, because they don't study it. They don't discipline themselves to do that. And because of that, you probably hear out in the world that we're an undisciplined generation of people. Well, I don't believe that's true, because in every realm of our life, we enjoy the fruit of disciplined research, which results far greater than what our forefathers ever dreamed. Meaning that all the great adventures that came about over time, that somebody had an idea about something and followed through with it and made it happen, and here it's in our lives right now. Maybe they did not know at that time what it was going to be, but they had some sense of what they were doing and what they were creating. For instance, TV. We can listen to television or radio right now and we hear our news instantaneously across the whole world, when a long time ago it was sent by mail before somebody decided how to create that so that we got that message. Now, it just didn't happen. That's not the word we want to use. Discipline is the word. It was painstaking, scientific, technical discipline that proved such a result. And then we might know when I say that, well, does it have to be painstaking? In some cases, yes. That's what forces us to move forward. And that's what stops most people from doing it, because they say, I don't feel like I want to be forced into doing it. I don't want pain. And then we've got this belief that says, no pain, no gain, which I disagree with in some ways. And so we might look at that. How does that fit in with what I'm talking about? Is it possible that we could have a thought that says it could be easy, whatever it is that we're doing, whatever it is that God is guiding us to, knowing that God is the source and doing the doing? We just need to work at being. But we have to sacrifice things to give up, to put our focus on what it is we're moving forward. What we're really doing when we do that is forming new habits. We're changing our thoughts. We're changing old paradigms. because we've been programmed a lot with the wrong information. Other people may be responsible for making us who we are, such as our parents, our schools, our churches, whatever it was as we were growing up. But now we're at the point where we're responsible for changing it, for making it what we want to be, our life. So it's going to cause a respectable amount of discomfort, but that's where the sacrifice comes in. You give up a little bit of discomfort, and the win that you get is enormous. When Marconi suggested that he was going to send a message through the medium of molecule, he was not going to use any wires. You know what happened? They had him checked into a mental institution. And yet here we are a long time afterwards watching TV and listening to a radio from what he said, what he stuck with and created. It's things like that that happen all the time, and being disciplined and focused on it. So we're not an undisciplined generation in any realm of our life except one. Anybody know what it is? Our thinking. In science and art and activities, in any practical endeavor, we know the worth of discipline in all of this stuff, and yet we let ourselves go. We don't discipline ourselves to practice thinking better thoughts about who we are and let go of the negative ones that are there, the ones that are complaining or finding fault with. That's again why it was pointed out in this piece of sculpture. Straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leads on to life, and few be those who find it. So all about changing our lives with all of these laws that I'm talking about, it's about disciplining ourselves. And that's why there's so few who find it. Like 1% of our population earns 96% of the wealth. Why is that? Everyone has the same opportunity, but maybe we just don't focus enough at it. Maybe we don't sacrifice ourselves enough to give up things that of the lower nature to connect to those of the higher nature. So maybe we need to look at giving up watching so much TV or hanging out or laying around and take some time to discipline ourselves, connect to God, meditate and study about this and gain an understanding of how our mind works so that we can have control over it. So let's really grasp the idea that I'm presenting to you guys here of how to learn, live in harmony with the laws. When you do that, you take control over your life. You take control of it through discipline. And discipline is giving yourself a command and saying, I want this, I am this, and you follow it. You could say statements like, I'm going to learn to control my thinking. I'm not going to let the outside world take charge of my life anymore. I'm in charge. Most people are playthings for what's going on outside of them. Let's change that. Would that be good? So that we have more charge of our life and creating more of what we want. Let's be one of those small select group of people that does gain an understanding of this law even more, which is why I'm presenting it to you, and then start acting and creating your life in harmony with that law. So there's a story to show you about this that goes, there was a man who went to the bank to cash a check, and he handed the check over to the teller and said, can you cash this? And the teller said, yes, I can, sir, but I need you to put your name on it. And the guy said, whoa. Wait a minute, I don't want to put my name on the check and hand it to you. You'll be handling my check with my name on it. You might not give me back the money. The teller said, sir, you have to put your name on the check before I can give you the money. And the man said, couldn't you just once give me the money and then I'll put my name on it? And the teller said, no, that's not how it works. How it works is you have to put your name on it first. So they argued back and forth, and finally the teller said, I can't help you, sir. You're going to have to leave. So he went to a second bank, and again, through the same routine. He was refused service. He asked to have it. He said no. He went to a third bank, got into the same routine, asking, couldn't you just give me the money, and then I'll put my name on it? And the young teller explained the policy to him and how it worked, but finally he had enough of it with this guy. He reached down underneath the teller's cage, pulled out a rubber baseball bat, whacked him on the head, and said, you have to sign this check. So the guy signed the check, handed it over, got the money, and he goes back to the first bank and he says to the teller, look, I went down the street and I got the money. And the teller says, yeah, I bet even when you went down the street, you still had to put your name on the check before you got the money. And the guy said, yeah, I did, but you see, no one quite explained it to me the way he did. So it's like we go to the teller of life and we say, I want the life that I want. And the universe says, okay, put your name to it. Bring your I am consciousness to it and vibrate to it. But then we get into fear. We don't want to trade that vibration. We want the universe to give us what we want, and then we think we'll put our name to it. Well, that's not how it works. This lesson is about how we must surrender our lower vibrations. Those are other words that I have on the flip charts. Trust, surrender, trust, and gratitude. Surrender ourselves, trust that what's coming to us, and be in gratitude. So, we must surrender the lower vibrations to match the higher frequency that's in harmony with what we want. And it's right there. Everything is there for us all the time, but we're just not vibrating at the same level. So when we begin to resonate with the frequency of what it is, we say and vision what we want, and it's there. Because why? Life is a generous giver onto any of us who places our I am presence, our Christ consciousness, in harmony with the frequency of what we say we want. There is one simple fact, always, something has to be sacrificed for something else. Everything in life has its price and is ever up for the giving if you and I are willing to claim it. We have to purchase it, though, at the price that it demands, which means letting go of the old, opening ourselves up to the new. Day after day, we can go up to life's counter like the guy did at the bank and say, I will give you this if you will give me that. This bartering has another name that's more familiar called sacrifice. Sacrifice is not what we've heard through our different religions. It's an inescapable necessity. It's a definite law that works in the universe that we must obey, because we're sacrificing something every day of our lives, whether we want to or not, whether we know that we're doing it, whatever we want of life. We have to give up something of the old to get the new. Do you get that? The vibration has to change to bring in what it is that you want. And what we're actually doing is making space within ourselves, letting go of the old, creating space for the new come in. Because as it's been said, the universe, in the beginning when I did this work, it was the universe abhors a vacuum. But now I know that the universe loves a vacuum because it wants to fill it with love and whatever it is that you want. So if you think about going to a great concert and listening to music that's divine, or you watch a skilled surgeon and his delicate task of repairing a body, or you consider a scientist in his lab with his formulas, or we think of a great person who's created a wonderful business that makes such differences in the world, are they all life? Yes, they are. They are liberated life because it took discipline and focus and connection to source, whether they were aware of it or not, to create whatever wonderful things that come to them that then is shared with everybody else. So you might want to say to yourself, I am going to attain achievement, and it's the most satisfying sort of living any of us can know, by creating our lives, bringing into it what it is that we want. So as the statement says, straight is the gate, narrow is the way of discipline that leads to such a life, and few be there who find it. Well, why don't you be the few who find it for your lives, okay? Yes. So reserve your seat next week and we'll go to part 2 of the law of sacrifice. Okay, namaste.